In 2007, I was living in Kenosha, Utah. Some of you may know where that is. It's 100 miles south of here. And a man that had been my advisor when I was in the BFA program here at BYU, Bruce Smith, retired, and they were filling that position with temporary appointments while they were looking for a permanent replacement. So they asked me to teach for a semester, and so I did so, and I enjoyed it very much. Anyway, incidentally, it's fun to see. I can't call you out, but as I look around and see some old friends, so catch up with you later. But I found that it was going to be difficult for me to maintain my professional career and seek a teaching career at the same time. So I decided not to apply for the position. But for that one semester, it was really not it would not have been sustainable over a career of teaching. But I could be really ambitious for one semester, you know. So I asked a ton of my students and decided I was going to ask it a lot of myself. So you know, I made kind of bombastic, large assignments. You know, in 3 days, I want 100 heads drawn in your sketchbooks, and I did it too. You know, I did the assignments as I was asking them to do. And I decided, since I was asking them to be ambitious, I should also be ambitious. So there was a wall this size in the studio that they had provided me. And I'd never done a painting this size, but I stretched a canvas. I just stapled the canvas to the wall and gessoed it, and then completely lost all confidence in now that students were coming and looking in my studio to see what I was going to do on this big canvas. I was terrified of it, and I had some ideas when I was stretching it, but those ideas all felt very silly and anemic. And it's funny when people hear that I'm an artist, they say, "Oh, that must be so fun." And I think if I had to come up with like 10 adjectives, that fun would be on the list. I don't know if it'd make the top 5, you know, but there's a lot of time spent in navigating terror. You know, you can't get rid of it. You can ignore it, you can suppress it, or you can embrace it and learn to dance around with it and around it. So I was terrified of this canvas, and I had been doing some paintings where there were these people kind of peeking in from the top. People usually call them angels. I generally call them witnesses, but they were just kind of otherworldly people looking in. Usually I would do that because compositionally I needed something up here, you know. So I have a sense of the world where our proceedings are witnessed, you know. So I would just kind of put, you know, people looking down, watching things, and I thought I want to do a painting that's just full of these witnesses. And I thought about the birth of my children and how witnessed those events felt, and I thought, well, maybe I should do the birth of Jesus. Now, this painting is generally called the Nativity, but that's not its title. Its title is Nativity. There's no definite article because it's yours too. You know, it's there wasn't just one. I mean, one of the things that draws us to this event is when he got one of these, he came into the world the same way you did, and it hurt him, and it hurt his mom, and it was messy, and he was hungry, and you know that, and so kind of one of the impossible things about the intrusion of Christianity upon the world was kind of a God approaching our experience. It was one of the things that was so threatening to the Romans and such. It was such a so devastating to their sense of hierarchy that a God would be like one of us. And so anyway, so I decided I would try the Nativity, and I knew I had to start right away because I was afraid, and because initially I thought I'll do preparatory drawings, and I thought you will totally lose it if you delay another day. So I started right here, right at the top of, in the museum they're uncomfortable with how close I get to the painting. I promise I won't touch it. Security guards are always, when I'm visiting. But anyway, I started right there at the top of Mary's forehead and drew for days and days and days and days and days. And I ran out of room for the animals that are usually in. I got so carried away with the angels, I ran out of room. But I wanted animals represented. I'm kind of a dog person, you know. I'm fairly confident that the breed of Labrador had not yet been developed at this time. So it's, you know, that's an anachronism. But in a painting like this, and in my paintings, I'm kind of looking more for an emotional accuracy rather than a historical accuracy. And I think that Labradors are perfectly good representations of dogs. So. And so now I'm going to take some questions. I think I've got one here, and then I want to hear from you kids here, and any kids that are around. What I find is that once the adults start asking questions, often the children stop. You don't have to stop. You can keep asking questions. But I just want to hear from them first. But, well, this first, and then we'll go to them.
Okay, the first question actually comes from an online viewer. At Fusily.Aaron asked, where do you find inspiration? Music, literature, other artists?
Yes. Okay, now, yeah, one thing that I feel like I've known it my whole life, but I'm learning it more and more and more, is the incredible importance of chaos. It's interesting that most of my life that's been kind of a bad thing, a thing we're fighting against. But in all of the creation myths, everything comes from there. You know, there's chaos, and that's where creation comes from. And so, and if you are human, I assume most of us are, you will be acquainted willfully or unwillfully with chaos. You know, I did a painting recently, maybe some of you have seen it, called Jesus and the Angry Babies. It's Jesus with a lap full of babies that are fighting and unhappy. And I initially did that drawing to entertain a guy in my band, Steve Vistana. We're very good friends, and we draw often to kind of make each other laugh. And I drew that just because all the pictures of Jesus with babies, they're well-behaved and cherubic and glad to be there. And I thought, do you have children? You know, yeah. I heard a comedian say, whoever said sleep like a baby, I mean, have they seen a baby? You know. So anyway, I thought, you know, I believe those stories that Jesus loved children and took them on his lap, but it was very often mom's idea, you know. They didn't know who this guy was, you know, and anyway, I just, because we love the Lord, we scrub all of the chaos out of his story, but I'm fairly confident that not all the kids were excited about it. And in doing that, drawing initially to make Steve laugh, it became a better metaphor for Jesus' dealings with us. You know, we're unruly, we're not getting along with each other. It must be exasperating for him, but he loves us, you know, and tells us to love each other. So I get ideas from chaos, sometimes from the chaos of studio practices where it's just applying paint kind of randomly to see what emerges. Or a lot of it, I always have this in my back pocket. It's a sketchbook, and just the randomness of conversations and things that kids say and weird thoughts. My theory is that so-called creatives don't have more good ideas than people who are so-called not creative. Human beings have ideas, but human beings often have the habit of saying, well, it can't be a good idea because I had it. Good ideas are had by other kinds of people. But I think that creativity is kind of a habit of capturing ideas so that later you can refer to them and then make a judgment. When an idea comes, it's not the time to judge it. But if you make any kind of brief note of it or sketch of it, and later you look at it and you say, you know, this is a good idea. So, from art, from music, from life, from chaos, that's where ideas come from. So, now, do you have any questions for me? Raise your hand. Okay, yes, sir.
I want to know why Joseph is covering his face, like he's like a...
Yeah, you don't have any children, do you? Okay, just a second. I'll answer this question first. You guys just hold on a second. So that is probably Joseph. Did you hear the question? Why is Joseph covering his face? I was present at the birth of all of my children, and although it was a much more dramatic experience for their mother, you know, it's a fairly dramatic experience for the father, who is mostly useless for that part of the process. And anyway, so I'm thinking of Joseph in this instance. Matter of fact, Mary's comforting Joseph. I mean, obviously, she has been through, you know, this Mary is sweaty. There's, you know, the midwives are, do you know midwives? I love midwives. They're smiling, cleaning up the gore, you know, I just love midwives. They're fantastic. And, anyway, thinking about the burden Joseph must have felt, the circumstances that they were in, you know, the absence of accommodations he would have preferred and such, that Joseph is kind of overwhelmed. And you'll understand that better when you have children. Yes?
Why is Jesus covering his face? Joseph covering his face?
Oh, you know what? I just answered that.
I know.
Okay, is there another aspect of Joseph well, you think of another question. Yes?
Why are there so many babies?
Why are there so many babies?
Yeah.
You know, when I started to make this crowd of angels, what was going through my mind is everything depends on this enterprise, you know. And so everyone would want to see it. And so in my mind, I was thinking, you know, they were organizing and get in line, but it just broke down, you know, just everybody kind of rushing in to see. And then rushing off, I suppose, to tell the shepherds and such. But just to kind of make it so it didn't feel like a mob, the presence of children just made it, I mean, you know, children, some of which don't care, you know, some of which are more interested in you than what's happening. It added a little bit of lightness to the press, the crowd of the group. So I put children in, and I don't know how, actually, I mean, you may know, somebody probably knows, I don't know how many angels there are. I've counted about 3 times, and I get a different number, and I kind of thought, I like that. So if you know, don't tell me. Between 150 and 200, something like that. But, okay, any other did you have a question?
Yeah. What's your favorite color to make?
What's my favorite color? I am still working on that. I like lots of colors. I really like blue, though. I've always really liked blue. Yeah, I got a lot of blue on. Hey, excellent.
Pink and purple.
You do have a lot of pink and purple. I don't wear a lot of pink and purple. I do, some, but not a lot. Yes?
The reason why there's so many angels because Jesus was born.
Yeah, and they all want to see. And a friend of mine, well, I didn't know him actually. He'd heard about it when I was working on the painting, and he brought his son into the studio to see it, a little boy. And he was just telling the story of, telling me about when he was reading the Christmas story to this little boy, the previous Christmas. And he was just a little guy, but he was aware enough to kind of, he was asking questions. What's a multitude of, what's that thing you said? Multitude of heavenly hosts. And his dad said, oh, it's a lot, a big group of angels. And the little boy said, well, how many? And he said, well, I mean, who would want to be there? And he thought for a minute, he said, everybody. So this is everybody. Well, it's just the lead edge of everybody. They go on over there. Okay, do you have any more questions here? You don't have to, I mean, you can have them later too, but yeah, you got one.
I thought that Jesus was born with only Joseph and Mary.
Okay, so that's interesting. You know what we know from the scriptures about Jesus' birth? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. Almost everything all the story that we have, almost all of it is from nativity scenes that we have created. We don't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't know that he was born in a stable. There's a piece of furniture that links him to being born in a stable that's mentioned. We're not told he was born in a stable. We're told he was laid in a feed trough. Like in those days, feed troughs were made of stone. He likely was, they didn't haul him around, So it is likely, but we don't know. And we don't know who was there. Matter of fact, these ladies here, these midwives, are not mentioned. But but one thing, I mean, I intuitively know this. Okay, let's say that some strangers have come to your house and the woman's gonna have a baby and they just want a corner of your garage, okay, to have a baby. I defy the women in your house to not go. I tell you, it would not, the women would come to help Mary. They had, I mean, as far as we know, and the details are kind of sketchy, but as far as we know, they had gathered because their families were there. The word inn could mean house. It doesn't necessarily mean a hotel. In all likelihood, there's so much family had gathered that there wasn't a place for them to have any privacy of any kind other than where the animals were. We have no word about it, but I feel, pretty close to 100% confident that there were women there to help. Unless they ran them off, and I bet the women would not have been run off. So, okay, you guys think if you have any more questions, but you have one? What is yours?
Well, my favorite colors I like as purple and pink mix blue.
Well, I love those colors too, and you look splendid in them. So, wonderful. Okay, so I guess the questions will be going here.
Both sides.
To both sides. So if you have any questions, just go to one mic or the other, and I'm talking, and I have no sense of time, so Philip will tell me when we're done.
How did you know when you were finished? What was the very last thing you did, and did you know when you did it that it was finished?
No. Now, there is something about a painting like this that it's different. Many of you have seen it before, and you've come back and seen it again. That's different for me because I painted it. And so there are things I would still do to it. Matter of fact, I spoke with, when Mark Magleby was the director of the museum, I said, can I? And he said, no, thank you. There's not much of a precedent for paintings in museum collections to go back to the artist to get fussed with. So I don't know that it is finished. Matter of fact, there's a quote attributed to Degas. I've not been able to find it, so it's probably somebody who quoting him from a dinner party or something like that. But he said, for an artist, it's always about what they're going to do, not what they did. And at some point, you just decide, I have said what I can say, and I could have spent the rest of my life working on this one painting. But I have to, there are others. Somebody asked me in selling them, how do you sell them? I mean, aren't they like your children? And I said, well, they're like grown children, you know. More coming, and so grown ones. Anyway, none of my children are here, so I can say that. Okay.
Is Joseph, how do I ask this without sounding terrible? He's darker than everyone else. Was that intentional, or did it just happen that way?
I mean,
No?
yeah, there's nothing in particular about that. I don't know. I mean, generally the colors I mix, sometimes they're darker, sometimes they're lighter. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question. He was, I mean, ethnically, they probably were all of these were.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah. But we're, I mean, there's some sense, but even knowledge of the ethnicity of people in Israel at that time is a little hard to pin down. It's a little hard to know. Yeah. Just to say, yes?
How did you get a canvas so wide?
How do I get a canvas so wide? The canvas is on a 100-yard roll. So I was limited by the size of the wall that I had to put it on, cut it there. But this is not the biggest painting I've done, but it was the biggest when I did this. Matter of fact, there's this funny sensation. Whenever I see it, it looks small to me because it was so huge, you know, compared to anything I had done. Now that I've done bigger ones, I expect to see it and be amazed at its size. But it's, you can do bigger ones than this. I lose track of you have a question? Sorry.
I'm curious what painting Christ, and with a particular emphasis on his human side as opposed to strictly his divinity, has done for your personal relationship with him.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because this, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, that the birth of Jesus is about him coming into our mess, you know. And I mean, I don't know that it changed it that much. It was a pretty long contemplation of it, working on this painting for a long time. When my son was born, I mean, I was alarmed at the color, you know. I was worried about it, but no one else seemed upset. So I thought, it must be okay. It must be okay. You know, he was purple, you know. And it kind of, I think that because of the importance and significance of Jesus's life, I feel like we don't know how to talk about the incredible risk involved in him doing this, you know, the danger. You know, people, there's some of the angels are crying, you know, people have said, oh, are they crying for joy? And I say, no, I don't know, but I mean, you can ask them, but but I kind of think some of them are kind of upset, you know, they know the stature of the being that has been compressed into a little purple, hungry, he can't control his limbs yet, infant. And that's such a vital part of Jesus understanding he came into our sweat and our milk and our mud and our mess, you know. It's in some ways that's an ugliness that we avoid, because in trying to depict Jesus as divine, we make him beautiful. A painter doesn't have a lot of ways to convince you that he's the good guy other than to make him beautiful, you know. But we have no indication that he was any more beautiful than others around. Isaiah indicates otherwise, you know, in his prophecy. No beauty that men should desire him is in those prophecies. I think that as Christians, we have this weird obligation to maintain both of those kind of opposites: his divinity and his humanness, his mortality. And actually, you know, I mean, we can fight about this later, but if people talk about him being perfect, I suspect that has more to do with he learned his lessons rather than he never made a mistake. That would not be human. He would have no idea what it was to be one of us if he was born walking, you know? That perfection, I think, has more to do with what we do with the chaos rather than never encountering it, you know? So anyway, that's my own little heresy. And you might disagree with it and have good reason to do so, but I think you got problems, you got problems, you got troubles. He knows what that's about, and because he felt them and experienced them. And so anyway, I think it's an important part of Christianity. Yes.
Do you know Jesus's favorite color?
I do not. I don't think we see it. He probably sees more colors than we see. There's a shrimp in the ocean called do you know what it's called? What's it? The mantis shrimp. We have 3 cones to see color. The mantis shrimp has 17 cones. So anyways, I think Jesus likes color, though. Lots of colors. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I wanted to ask a question, and you've answered it a little bit in this question there, but in the overarching story that's going on, there are obviously so many tiny, like, little stories, like the God being able to see angels, or the angels of Joseph. I was wondering if there are any stories to do with the individual angels that you would like to tell or that mean a lot to you, or if it's not too personal, if there's any angel that represents somebody or an experience or something that means a lot to you. If that question makes sense.
This is kind of in answer to your question, this is kind of maybe a somewhat, I mean, it's not like it's profound to me, so I'll tell you. First of all, I just paint them to see who they are. You know, I draw them and sometimes say, it looks kind of like my sister-in-law, you know, but it's not I did a painting one time called Fighting with My Sister-in-Law, but it looked a little bit too much like the sister-in-law I was inclined to fight with. So I had to change it to look more like a sister-in-law that would just laugh at it. So. Neither of them are here tonight. So when I had the white canvas and had decided I was going to paint Nativity, Joe Ostroff, did he retire this year? Joe?
No, he's still going.
He's still here? Okay, yeah. We'll be retiring in the next few years. Anyway, Joe Ostroff, a faculty member, came into the studio, and I was just walking back and forth in front of this big white canvas, trying to build up the courage to start. And so I said, you know, I'll have the Holy Family here. And then I think I'll just have this like this river of angels coming through like this. And he said, well, you're going to include the midwives, right? And I had read about some Jewish folklore about midwives at Jesus' birth. But I had forgotten about that story. And so when he said it, I said, oh yes, absolutely. I'm going to include the midwives. And so when I drew the angels, they were all just heads. They were all bald, added their hair later. Except I left that one bald because Joe shaves his head. It doesn't look like Joe. His face doesn't look like Joe. But that was kind of in gratitude to Joe for reminding me about what I think is a really, really critical part of the piece. The women that would have helped Mary. Yes?
There's actually an angel right there that's bald.
Where?
I think those two.
I don't see it.
Like a little bit to the right.
Over here? Oh, that one right there. So there are two bald ones. He's just receding. His hair's back here. Right, well done. Well done, well observed. But that's not Joe. Joe's the one over there. So, yeah?
What would you say is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
The most difficult part of my artistic process? I will try really hard to not whine for a while, because I could whine for a long time, I'm afraid. I thought when I was a young artist that I would, by this age, have figured it out, and so I would just go to the studio and execute splendid things. And I am as clueless as I was as a student. I have more experience. I have more wisdom. I have more ability to see where I mean, when I was younger, I was stupider about what I didn't know. Now I know more what I'll say this one thing and then just kind of stop. If I assume you're an artist, I don't know where you've gone. Where did you go? Are you an artist? Okay. A good friend of mine, Leslie Norris, a poet who, our good friend, he said a poem is perfect when you, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably in an interview with you, but he said a poem is perfect when it's just begun, because all of its potential is present in this poem that you've just started. But as you work it, as you complete it, it can't do all of those things. You have to make some decisions about what road it's going to follow. Now, we read Leslie's poems and just think, it's fantastic. We don't know the ones that got away. Leslie does. And so part of being a creative is not being undone by the things you were not able to do in your work. I mean, I'm not an athlete, but I'm told that Michael Jordan missed far more buzzer 3-point shots to win the game than he made. We don't remember him. And he was not undone by the misses. So kind of the most difficult part is keep going. Just keep going. Keep trying. Keep pushing forward. Keep trying to embrace the chaos, because that's where the stuff is. It hurts to do that. It's not fun all the time. So, yes, you have a question.
The dog looks like it's looking at the angels leaving. Did you do that on purpose?
She asked if the dog looking at the angels, if I did that on purpose. Yes, that dog is the only mortal thing that sees them. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it means, but I did do that on purpose. Yeah, well observed. That's great. Any more questions over here? Yeah.
How do you think has your work impacted people? And if you don't have an answer to that, that's okay. Maybe like what I'm asking is like, what is the purpose why you're creating, why you're doing what you're doing?
I think that if I went to the studio to impact you, I would just lay down and die. That would just be the end of it. That it happens is wonderful, but is incidental to the process. I go to the studio to ask questions, to try to understand certain things about being human, about reaching for God, about yearning for things that you might get, yearning for things you may never get. I mean, I go to the studio for a lot of reasons, and when I can access my own story at the heart of it, then it's more likely to also speak to you. But if I'm trying to speak to you, I'll do neither, you know. So I don't know what effect my work is. I'm told, you know, and you know, people tell me, people who don't like what I do don't look for me and tell me, you know. So I also try very hard to not be distorted by the fact that the people who do seek me out usually have good news for me, you know. But that's not the complete picture. And so, I mean, that's a pleasantness, but it's not it can't be the driving thing, because it ebbs and flows. And so anyway, thank you for asking that difficult question.
First, I'd like to thank you for including some of the reality of birth. And you mentioned that you had thought of changing some things. You asked the museum about changing some things. What would you change?
Yeah, I've thought about whether or not I would answer that question. Because partially, at this point, I need to be careful not to interfere with your experience of the piece. But one thing, I don't know where you went. Oh, there you are. Thank you. One thing that, the thing that I was talked to Mark about is, this was painted 15 years ago. Is it, there a date on it? 06? Okay. So, yeah, 50, how many years ago is that? 17, okay. And I mentioned earlier that this group of people, of angels, was everybody. And so I thought about, how do you paint everybody? And I looked at like African nativities, and they're all black, you know. And I thought, that's brilliant. And Chinese nativities, and they're all Chinese. So I thought, yeah, if I start introducing different ethnicities, then people will start counting, you know. And so I made the decision to not, just make it homogeneous. And I regret that. Now, as I heard recently on Instagram, you know, a comedian was saying, yeah, people say that America is a melting pot. It's really more of a charcuterie board, you know, and which I thought was really brilliant. And so I'm kind of in the process of dealing with that. I don't know what to say other than it was a different world 17 years ago. And I have sympathy for that guy in his mid-40s who was tackling something huge and not tackling it for anybody else, but just kind of examining it. I mean, I painted this like I do any small piece, just kind of looking. And so anyway, that's That's what I would, that is the one thing that I think that I would try. I think I was wrong about people would be counting. You know, why? What? Well, there's somebody from China, but what about Southeast Asia? You know, I was asking really stupid questions of myself, I think. You know, I was stupider. I hope I was stupider then. Hope I'm better, smarter. But I mean, what I say when I look at a painting, when I look at a Chinese nativity, if I love it, it's me. And so I thought, yeah, everyone can do that. And it turns out that's not always the case. So anyway, that is my apology to you. Are there more? Do we have time?
Hi, I'm following the live chat here. And I also want to announce that these will be the last few questions to the people who are already online. Somebody online asks, your faces are so unique, why do you construct them that way?
I don't know. Yeah, drawing is like handwriting. You know, I mean, it's. I actually, to your point earlier, when I was finished painting this, I am thinking about this, why I draw faces this way. When I finished painting this painting, I missed working on it. It was in an exhibition upstairs. It was out of my hands. And so I started another, not as big as this, but has more people in it. And I have decided I won't finish it. I work on it every year. I'm about to get it out. I get it out in December, and I work on it a little bit. When I started working on it, my youngest daughter, was about 8 or 9, and she said, "Can I help?" And I said, "Yeah." I gave her some charcoal, and I can't paint out her little heads, you know, the little angels. She's just kind of shoving in the cracks and things like that with her little handwriting. I can't bring myself to paint those out, you know, but they look different from mine. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why. I paint the idea of people. I'm not really doing portraits. I find when I paint the idea of a person, it's more likely to connect to you. They're all self-portraits, you know, all the women, all the dogs, all the men. They're all me. And if I hit it, then they're you too. So.
Okay, so at this point we have 5 minutes left for the remaining 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
4 questions.
Yes or no's?
From our student educator?
Yes.
Okay, actually I think at this point we'll go here and then over there.
Okay.
5 minutes left.
Okay, what is your favorite work of art by someone else?
Not in 5 minutes. There isn't a favorite. And it changes, and there are. I probably, my short list would probably be 1,000 paintings and sculptures and cave paintings long. Yeah. To the first question about where inspiration comes from, a lot of it comes from art. Going to museums with my family, they very quickly just realize, let's let Dad go. You know, he spends an hour in front of this and skips these 10. You know, so yeah, I can't answer your question. There are a lot of artists that I love.
I am a student educator here at the museum, and I'm actually wondering, we have this discussion in our exhibit next door about Christian artwork and the visual depiction of Christ over time and how that changes. And I think nowadays, in the world that we live in, a lot of people are necessarily share a lot of the same values that people back then did in terms of religion. So how do you continue to strive to make Christ relevant?
Only by believing that Christ is relevant. Most of my paintings don't include Jesus. I feel like they're all religious paintings because I'm religious. But I actually, I've had a criticism to many religious contemporaries is that I feel like maybe they're trying too hard to sell something that's pretty important. Just try to fathom it, you know. If I try to convince you of something, then I've made decisions about it, and I might be wrong about some of those decisions, or I may want you to feel a certain way about how I want you to perceive that I feel about blah, 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 and it gets really clogged up. Whereas if I go to a religious painting asking questions, it's easier to be honest, you know. So yeah, I go to the easel much more with a question mark than an exclamation point. Yeah. So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
I was wondering, as a professional artist, how do you balance?
No balance.
No balance.
I don't even know what you're going to say, but there's no balance.
I was just going to say, like, making a piece palatable for the general public, but also making something that you want. So listening as an example, if you wanted to like show me, like blood, show how more like serious birth is and how graphic it is.
Yeah.
But also be like the general public might not respond to that as well. I don't know. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole board, you know, a table of deciders. You know, there's a money guy there who says, no, that's too big. How are you gonna move that? You know what? You know, and you just don't want them all to be money guys. You know, and one of the issues is what can and will be perceived and received and accepted. I don't know how. I don't know. You just kind of do. You wing it. And you get it right sometimes. You get it wrong sometimes. Yeah, and you go on. Try to learn from your mistakes.
Could you share with us your thoughts on why you included other babies?
I like to draw babies. I don't know. I don't know if I have a better answer than that. I like to draw babies. Babies are this great. I mentioned earlier the importance of chaos, and little children are this splendid presence of chaos in your life. You know, there's a story actually about the Buddha in one of his incarnations where he had become wise and knew everything, and people came to him, and he got married and had children, and all of his wisdom was out the window, you know. And so I think that it's almost too big of a question for me to answer about why. I love them. I think that they do throw order out the window and kind of force us to confront what is really important, and not necessarily what is really convenient. And it just seemed like in this massive group, kind of leaving them out would have been. It wouldn't have been my painting. So, are we done? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ronnie.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, for your questions, for your interest. I just want to make an exciting announcement. There will be a large exhibition of Brian's work coming up later this year, opening August 16th.
Next year, please. Yeah.
If it was this year, it would be Christmas. It will be up next year. He has a lot of paintings to finish before. A large mid-career retrospective. And it'll be up on the main level, really big exhibition. Please come back. It opens August 16th, and it'll be open for almost a year until June of the following year. So we're very excited for that. Also, on the main level, please enjoy refreshments, hot chocolate, eclairs, and so forth. Please don't bring the food down here. The MOA closes at 9 o'clock, so you have a full hour to enjoy and to visit exhibitions and to visit with each other. Finally, just wanted to point out this fun little gather activity that's great for families, kids, those who are still kids that are adults. A 12 Days of Christmas kind of scavenger hunt that takes you around the museum. How about one more big round of applause for Brian?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your observations and your good questions.